Good evening. Welcome to the November 4th meeting of Troy City Council. I'm Marty Baker, President of Council. Please silence your electronic devices for the duration of the meeting. We'll begin with the invocation by Mr. Todd Sievert, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Lord, as we bow our heads, let us reflect on your words, thy will be done. We get so caught up, Lord, in our daily lives and beliefs that we sometimes fail to pause and recognize that it is your will that shall be done. The will that states do unto others as you would have others do unto you, Lord. As we approach the election day tomorrow and commence a new election cycle, let us recognize that our opinions may differ, but ultimately it is your will to which we shall aspire. Lord, we know that your hand is everywhere. It's in trained dogs that eradicate terror from the world, rehabilitated drug users reuniting with families, and in the passage of my close friend's father this week. Lord, we are witness to your handwriting through your handiwork, through our peacekeepers and first responders who protect the balance between life and death with your compassion and grace. Lord, we pray that thy will be done through the citizens of this great city who through their community rise to praise your name. Our Father, we pray that tonight and every night thy will be done as it is in heaven, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mrs. Oda?
Here.
Mr. Twiss?
Here.
Mr. Sievert?
Present.
Mr. Heath?
Here.
Mr. Lutz?
Here.
Mr. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Kendall?
Here.
Mr. Swayzer?
Here.
Mr. Twilliger?
Here.
All members of council are present.
This evening, we have an introduction. Ms. Lindsay Woodruff, the incoming president of Troy Main Street, is here with us this evening to make an introduction.
Hello, my name is Lindsay Woodruff. I am the owner of Pachamama Market next door, and I am the vice president of Troy Main Street. And it is my joy and honor to introduce to you our new executive director, Andrea Keller. Andrea came to Troy Main Street, was it 2 years ago? Yeah. As an intern for the Leadership Troy program, and we couldn't let her go. So she served as a board member and resigned this summer so that she could apply for and ultimately gain the position of our executive director. I am so excited to have her. Andrea lives downtown, shops downtown, loves downtown. I love having a fellow millennial ending all of those bad stereotypes with our joy and passion for our communities. And I'm so excited to have her here with you tonight.
Welcome, Andrea. Mrs. Knight, will you please read a summary of the minutes from the October 21st meeting of Troy City Council?
Minutes of council, October 21, 2019. Committee reports. Community and Economic Development Committee recommended that legislation be prepared regarding the items of legislation required by state law for the Highlands annexation. Finance Committee reported, 1, recommending that legislation be prepared authorizing submitting a grant application for funding for the East Main Street Reconstruction Project Phase 1. Committee also recommended legislation be prepared authorizing an application with Ohio Development Services Agency for a grant associated with Troy Community Works for the property at 1-3 East Main Street. Resolution number R46, 2019, Municipal Services for Highlands Annexation, first reading and adopted. Resolution number R47, 2019, Buffer Requirements related to Highlands Annexation, first reading and adopted. Resolution number R48, 2019, Consent to Highlands Annexation, was given first reading and adopted. Resolution number R49, 2019, Application through MVRPC for funding for the East Main Street project was given first reading and was adopted. Resolution number R50, 2019, authorizing application associated with the property at 13 East Main Street was given first reading and adopted. Following various comments, council adjourned 7:45 PM.
Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Move we accept the minutes.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Mr. Kendall and seconded by Mr. Heath to accept the minutes. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Twist,
Yes.
Mr. Siebert,
Yes.
Mr. Heath,
Yes.
Mr. Lutz,
Yes.
Mr. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Kendall,
Yes.
Mr. Swazer,
Yes.
Mr. Terwilliger,
Yes.
Mrs. Oda.
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
We have a couple of committee reports this evening. We'll begin with Chairman, Mr. William Twist, and the Community and Economic Development Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. On November 1st, committee members Twist and Schweizer met to consider recommending that the city purchase additional real estate property for the relocation of Fire Station 1. Council authorized purchasing a parcel between Canal and Mulberry Streets for a new fire station. A small adjacent parcel has become available for $80,000. It is the recommendation of this committee that legislation be prepared authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety to finalize the details and execute documents to purchase the property with an address of 212 South Mulberry Street from the Full Gospel Community Church of God at no cost to exceed $80,000, at a cost not to exceed $80,000. So that the purchase can be finalized as soon as possible, the committee does support emergency legislation, and that's respectfully submitted. Tom Kendall, John Swazer, myself as chair, William Twist.
Are there any questions from council members? Thank you, Mr. Twist. The next report is from the Personnel Committee and Chairman, Mr. Todd Siebert.
Thank you, Madam President. Mayor Beamish has requested approval of the reappointment of Richard Bender to a new term on the Economic Development Revolving Loan Fund. This committee supports the request of the mayor. Therefore, I would move that council approve the reappointment of Richard Bender to a new term on the Economic Development Revolving Loan Fund for the period of January 1, 2020 through December 31, 2023.
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Mr. Siebert and seconded by Mr. Phillips to accept the reappointment of Mr. Bender. Had to think. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Siebert,
Yes.
Mr. Heath,
Yes.
Mr. Lutz,
Yes.
Mr. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Kendall,
Yes.
Mr. Swazer,
Yes.
Mr. Terwilliger,
Yes.
Mrs. Oda,
Yes.
Mr. Twist.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
We now open the meeting for citizen comments. At this time, does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments related to agenda items this evening? If so, please come to the microphone and state your name and address. There is a 2-minute time limit at this point in the meeting, and Mr. Grant Kerber is our timekeeper. Seeing none, then we'll move on. We have no resolutions this evening and have just one ordinance. Mrs. Knight, please read ordinance 037, 2019.
Ordinance number 037, 2019. Ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety of the City of Troy, Ohio, to proceed with the purchase of real estate for municipal use and declaring an emergency. This will purchase property at 212 South Mulberry Street at a cost not to exceed $80,000. First reading.
Are there any questions or comments from council?
Move for suspension. Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Phillips and seconded by Mr. Schweizer to suspend the rules. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Heath,
Yes.
Mr. Lutz,
Yes.
Mr. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Kendall,
Yes.
Mr. Swazer,
Yes.
Mr. Terwilliger,
Yes.
Mrs. Oda,
Yes.
Mr. Twist,
Yes.
Mr. Siebert.
I will need to recuse myself on this issue, Madam President.
Move to adopt. Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Schweizer and seconded by Mr. Terwilliger to adopt the ordinance. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Heath,
Yes.
Mr. Lutz,
Yes.
Mr. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Kendall,
Yes.
Mr. Mr. Swazer,
Yes.
Mr. Terwilliger,
Yes.
Mrs. Oda,
Yes.
Mr. Twist,
Yes.
Mr. Sievert.
Again, I will need to recuse myself.
Ordinance is adopted.
That completes the business portion of tonight's meeting. Mrs. Knight, are there any communications or announcements?
No, they're not.
Mayor Beamish, do you have any comments this evening?
Just a few. First of all, thank you again for the reappointment of Richard Bender. Good choice, and he's excited about continuing. Second thing, tomorrow we will have an oath of office given to two promotions. First of all, Matt Mosier will be moving to the rank of sergeant on the Troy Police Department. That'll take place tomorrow. And then also at the same time, a promotion to the rank of captain for Zach Mumford. I'm looking forward to having the privilege of giving them the oath of office tomorrow for their new promotions. So congratulations to those two fine Troy police officers. Troy High School Band, many people may or may not know, yesterday they had state competition. They came through with a superior rating again at the state competition held at UD last evening. So that's a great. And then of course our Troy High School football team again made it to the playoff system in the state. And they will have a home game this Friday at 7 o'clock. So go Troy. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Titterington, do you have any comments?
Just a reminder and announcement, I guess. Thanksgiving holiday is coming up. The city offices, as usual, will be closed on the Thursday and Friday. That's the 28th and the 29th. However, trash pickup will be on schedule. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. City Auditor, Mr. Frigge?
Thank you, Madam President. I have nothing at this time.
Thank you. Director of Law, Mr. Kerber?
I have the same as Mr. Frigge, nothing at this time.
Thank you. Are there any comments from council members this evening?
Madam President?
Mr.
Go ahead.
Good, yep. I just want to say happy Veterans Day to everybody coming up this week. Any of the vets out there, appreciate what they've done for us. But before that, that's November 11th, November 10th, the 244th Marine Corps birthday. So any of my fellow brothers and sisters out there, Semper Fidelis, and happy birthday.
And I believe that the Veterans Day ceremonies are November 11th at 11 a.m. at Riverside Cemetery, in case anyone wants to come out for that.
I just had a
Mr.
couple
Sievert?
things to follow up. One, in response to the recusal, I just want to explain, I wanted to wait for the vote to be done, but that property is listed by a company that is called Garden Gate Realty that my father owns, so I felt uncomfortable participating in that discussion and in that vote. Second, I wanted to apprise council, although a number of you were there, which we appreciate, at the recent at-large meeting that we have on those Saturday mornings quarterly. We had a good crowd again, probably about 13. I see some people have made it their way all the way to council meetings today after that, but we learned a lot, and it was a good, it served its purpose. There were several questions that were brought before us that ended up being brought here that I think some of them were here about. A really nice lady brought up the point that she works for Goodwill, and one of the benefits of the municipal golf course, or the municipal miniature golf course, I guess, up at St. Mary's, is it provides a vocational forum for their group called Capabilities, and I believe Capabilities is also in Miami County, and that during the day they allow, or they use the golf course to work on business ventures. So that was a nice comment from her. And there were a number of people there to just gather information. So I know Mr. Terwilliger was there, President of Council Madam Baker was there, and we just appreciate those, and we'll continue those. I believe they'll continue with the new group once it gets elected. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other council members, any comments? Any comments from city staff this evening? Any questions or comments from anyone in the audience? Please come to the microphone and state your name and address.
So for something new here, I can bring my question now?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Harriet Murphy. I live at 2730 Douglas Drive, Troy. I am not receiving my mail. It's not being delivered. I've been there since the end of August. This is October. I'm going on my 9th month. I have talked to the postmaster at the Troy, Postmaster Al. He is no longer there. There evidently is a new postmaster. I emailed Mayor Beamish. He had sent me on to the engineering's office, Jill Rhodes. She said they were working on it within the system. She then evidently went on maternity leave. I ended up talking with Christy, the assistant engineer. Nothing has still been done. I talked to the Cincinnati post office. So I'm down to, I talked to my builder. So what I have been told, and I talked to Frank Harlow, he is the developer where I live, which is at Fox Harbor, west of town. He has developed it, and I have been to his office, and I have talked to him several times since then. He states that in June, the first time I talked to him, was that he was aware that we would not get mail. However, he was under the assumption that where we're at, if you come off Fox Harbor, our street goes west off Fox Harbor, that he thought that was a continuation of Fox Harbor, but the post office says it is not. So in June, he talked with the postmaster. Postmaster told him the only thing he could do is put up the cluster boxes. He has since then, in June, he filed a arbitrary claim stating that he would like to have our mail delivered house to house. So I talked to him 2 weeks ago, and he got an email from Michael Alter or his assistant or whoever, and he has been out, whether it was vacation, sick leave, whatever the case may be, and he hadn't got to it, which was 3 months ago. When I talked to Frank a couple weeks ago, Frank said that the reason he hasn't put the box, one of the reasons he hadn't put the boxes up was because once he puts the boxes up, then he has no recourse, such as hoping to get mail delivered to each of our homes. Mind you, I've been picking up my mail for 8 months. Now, it might not sound much to you, but when I'm coming, about 3 miles one way, now we're going 6 miles. You get medicine in the mail, you get bills in the mail. My voting ballot, I just got, because I have to go pick it up. Now I have to hand deliver it tomorrow. So, I mean, and, we get packages, we get all kinds of things. So what is my recourse here? Frank says that he doesn't know. He said that Michael had told him in the email, I'm working on it, I'll get back to you. He keeps telling us that. So I went from the post office here in Troy to the engineering department, to the Cincinnati post office, to my builder, to Frank Harlow, back to the city. So how long do I go without getting my mail? I'm a citizen here, pay my taxes, I volunteer in the city. What's my recourse? Where do I start now? I've been in a circle for 8 months. There's other people here, I'm certain they're going to want to say their spiel. What do we do now? Any suggestions?
We'll start with Mr. Titterington.
Sure. So just by way of a little background, because I don't think the council knows really what's going on. Several years ago, the U.S. Postal Service across the country made the decision, I guess as a cost-cutting measure, as well as a staffing issue, to require any new construction of subdivisions to only be allowed cluster boxes, which are the gang boxes where you might have 8 or 12 or even 30 mail slots in one location rather than separate mailboxes at the street. At the time that they changed the regulation, they left it up to the various regions as to how aggressively they wanted to enforce it, how quickly. They did not set a drop-dead date. However, more and more of the regions began to institute it. At some point, the Cincinnati region did begin to enforce it. Unfortunately, we were not told in advance that they were going to do this so that we could work with our developers as part of our subdivision regulations and review. And lo and behold, this section of Fox Harbor being one of those subdivisions, if you know about it, the first part of Fox Harbor has been done for several years. Mr. Harlow came in, bought the remaining lots, and is now finishing that with a final section or two of construction. When we filed the addresses with the post office so that they could get them into their system, they sent them back to us and said, no, we're not accepting these, they need to be cluster boxes. That began a kind of a review internally, and with them, with Mr. Kerber saying, okay, do they have the right to do this? We figured they probably did since they're the federal government, but we wanted to know more about it. It was around this time that the postmaster here in Troy did retire, and so we have a new one that came on board. I don't know that one was related to the other, but that was just another complication. We did have a conference call with Mr. Alter from Cincinnati once we figured that we just needed to find out how we could get this issue resolved as quickly as possible. Mr. Harlow was in that conversation. We also then communicated with the other developers, since there are several other developments that Mr. Harlow and Mrs. Meinsinger and some of the others are developing. At that time, this was in June, and at that time, we were told, Frank was told, the developers were told that any new subdivisions would definitely be required to have the cluster boxes. So moving forward, they know that they have to put those cluster boxes in. That's, for example, the villas at Halifax, or the Halifax Villas, the new one that's at the corner of Troy Sidney and Troy Urbana. That will have cluster boxes. Mr. Alter did offer to the developers where there are subdivisions that are half done or partially done and have already installed curbside boxes, that he and the others could file an appeal with the Cincinnati region to have an exemption from the policy. Our understanding is that appeal was immediately filed. It was not Mr. Alter, it was Mr. Alter's boss, I guess, who was off for 3 months. Nobody knew that. We thought it was working its way through the process. Lo and behold, we found it was not. We have since been in contact with him weekly. As 2 weeks ago, or at the end of, about 10 days ago, Mr. Alter did come back and say that his boss is back. He would be talking to him that week. And so just today, we sent another email out saying, okay, is there any resolution? Are we getting anywhere with this? Unfortunately, there's nothing that we can do because the post office has to accept the addresses before they can schedule mail for delivery through their delivery folks. But we are pursuing it as much as we possibly can. We've been communicating back and forth with Frank and his office, as well as with Mr. Alter, to try to resolve it as quickly as we can, even though, yes, it has been an inordinate amount of time that's gone by.
So we have no end date for this? I mean, this could go on another 2 or 3 months while we wait for the post office to decide
I
what they're
would
doing?
hope not. I suppose we could send an email daily instead of weekly, but there's no deadline that we can set for the post office.
And it wouldn't carry any more weight if Mr. Kerber would send a legal email to him or
He's
anything?
he's shaking his head no. I don't wanna
Doesn't make any difference, huh?
Put under the bus, but
Dealing with the federal bureaucracy sometimes, it's I mean, and again, you don't, you contact them on a weekly basis, you don't want to be a pest and jeopardize the appeal.
How many people are affected with this?
I think we're up to 15 houses.
that have been
And
built.
across from us, he's building 22, I believe.
Did I understand something that they didn't recognize your street?
Oh,
Was
at
there
the
some-
beginning, it was horrendous.
Well, not knowing that issue, was there a logistical issue? Was there a signage issue? Or they were just saying we weren't recognizing it because we're the government?
Well,
and you're
here's what
not?
happened to us initially. When we moved in the end of February, we called our builder, sure, you can put up a box, which we did. I changed it online with the post office. The next day, I get an email, we don't deliver in your area. Go to your local, which we did. And it just escalated from there. She said, it's not our fault, you need to go to the engineer's office. No one was there. Go to the engineering, well, we went to the water department to try and change our address. There's nothing in the system, there's no such address. And so then we kept going back to Al, the old postmaster. And then we got Mr. Beamish, and then we got it's just snowball. Everybody wants to throw it in a circle. And you can understand our frustration. I'm on my 9th month of not getting my mail. And not every, I shouldn't say that. I've talked to quite a few of our neighbors that they've had, no, their builders aren't telling them they're not getting mail. So it's frustrating. You know, you go and you pick up your mail and you try to be nice to them because it's not their fault. But, now our builder, the way they said it, they didn't know we were not going to get mail delivered. But then it ended up we didn't. But nothing ever gets done. I think that's why it's frustrating. I appreciate your candor of him telling us the story, and I understand that's not, but you can understand our frustration. 9 months, I have to go get my mail. You know, I mean, you do everything you're supposed to as a citizen, and then you have this kind of frustration. I've done a lot of work. I call a lot of people, and I get zip, except this, thrown around the bush again.
Have you talked to the federal government at all? Have you talked to your congressman? Because it's really a federal
No, I have
government
not.
issue.
Somebody did contact.
Yeah, so let me step and let someone else.
My name is Richard Spears. I live at 2755 Douglas. As my neighbor so eloquently put it, it's been extremely frustrating. We moved in the first week of March. And to answer your question, I do have a request for assistance that I just sent off to Sherrod Brown's office day before yesterday. Okay. I have had contact with them 3 times. I did send an email to Mr. Heath in June, but I realized there's a lot going on. I had not heard back from them. But the thing is, like she said, it's such a major inconvenience. My wife and I are in the process of trying to start our own business, and we can't even get mail. And the thing is, we were told at the beginning that our builder would put the mailbox in for us. Now, obviously, he didn't know we weren't going to get mail, or why would he pay to put in our mailbox? So if Mr. Harlow was aware of the gang box situation, he did not pass that on to the other builders. So it's just been, like she said, it's just been round and round and round and round, and we don't get anywhere. And we're just asking for someone to give us some kind of an idea where this resolution is going to come from, because my wife and I, it would have been a deciding factor if we had known that we weren't going to get mail delivery to build there.
And I don't want to misrepresent. Mr. Harlow did not know about this any earlier than anybody else. So he didn't have that knowledge any more than anybody else did. So we were all playing catch up, and now we're just trying to push the post office as quickly as we can.
Understand. I've worked for the Army for 10.5 years, and I've been in city government in Springfield, Fire Division for 26 years. So I'm well aware of how we get wrapped up in red tape. But I'm just saying, as she said, somebody needs to do something, because it's just a major inconvenience.
If I may, sir.
It sounds, excuse me,
Okay.
Wait, just a minute, we can't all talk at once.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I was just going to say to his question.
You got to come front.
You need to come to the microphone, please.
By the way, Google Maps sees Douglas Drive.
I was just going to say to the person, I don't know who, I couldn't see, who asked, that road had already been there, and there was already a house on that road before they started adding our houses on there. So the road's been there for a long time. It's had the name for a long time, and there's one address. And when we first started with the Google Maps and all that, everything went to that address. Like, if you're trying to find our house, the only Douglas Drive in Troy was that house. So when people are looking it up or trying to find our house, that was the only address. But Douglas Drive has been there for quite a long time, to go to your question.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew that, I just was wondering why they wouldn't recognize or what the thought process was behind it.
Ma'am, could we have your name?
I'm sorry, Jody Spears.
Thank you.
To reiterate what you said, Patrick, my husband and I went to Frank Harlow's office, and he said he did know. He said that he knew a year before he built out there, that he was aware.
Well.
See, now, but here's the point. Everybody tells us something different, so we don't know what's true or not. Mr. Harlow said to us, I was aware a year before I built this that we would have to have cluster boxes, but they never enforced it. Now they're enforcing it, and 8 months later, we're still here doing this. So I think we're getting conflict info. I don't know who, how, and what's right. All I know is I just want my mail delivered.
So can I say something, Madam President?
Mrs. Oda?
Mrs. Murphy came to our our discussion group Saturday morning, and this was the first time we had heard this issue. So we've been trying to trying to get the city, what can the city do? Not much. I have contacted Congressman Davidson. I've had several conversations with their company, with their office, and the post office connection that they have is telling them they will try to have a resolution or at least an end date. And that's what I'm asking for, is what's the end date? Just give us an end date for this. So we are waiting to hear back from Davidson's office on that.
Okay,
That's
so
kinda
it
where we're
sounds
at.
like, as far as this evening is concerned.
I'll let some of the other neighbors want to speak to you.
Sure.
Okay?
Sure.
Hi, my name's Penny Ryder, and I live at 2780 Douglas Drive. And I just wanted to add that the very first house on the street, they do deliver the mail to that home. They just won't, and we're not sure why, that home gets mail, but the rest of us do not. And I too, have had to go multiple times. We've been there since July. And it wasn't so bad at first until the day I had to go and drag out a 25-pound box of cat litter out of the post office, down the steps and into my car. Our builder was Keystone Builders. They didn't say anything to us about no mail. Had I known that, I probably wouldn't have built that home. I probably would have gone somewhere else to build it. So, but thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience?
I just want to add something. I guess I'm the one that's most frustrated because I've been there the longest. But it's everyone doesn't, I don't think people understand the magnitude this is and where we stand. I mean, like you were talking about, Frank. Frank's a super guy, nice guy. Come on, Frank, I need my mail. It's winter coming here. And he says, sure, I'll get to it, but then he keeps throwing us another ball, we keep catching it, we keep going to the next person. So, I mean, I appreciate you checking with that, and hopefully we'll have something, maybe a theory by the end of the week, but we've heard that for so long. Okay, so what do we do now? Suggestions, everyone.
I know that you're frustrated. I understand that you're frustrated. At this point, it sounds like we're waiting for Cincinnati to respond. And tonight, we're not going to be able to give you the answer that we wish we could give you. Mr. Titterington and the offices here are staying on top of it and trying to send them an email every week. And as soon as we get a response, Mrs. Knight has your name, and if you want to, after the meeting, you can give her a phone number, and we will contact you as soon as we get a positive response. But it is not up to the city to make that decision. We have to wait for the decision to come from Cincinnati. And so, that's the best we can do this evening. And if you'll stay in touch, we'll try to stay in touch with you, and we'll try to get it resolved.
Or we'll be back here again.
That's fine. We meet in 2 weeks on a Monday night. Thank you.
Ma'am, I do have just a
Mr.
quick question.
Sievert?
Does everybody have mailboxes up out there? Yes.
Not every single, but a lot of us. And that's the thing, I talked with Frank, the first time my husband and I went there and talked to Frank. I said, Frank, you have mailboxes. We went out and bought a mailbox. I mean, it's $100, $150, doesn't sound like much, but you took the time to put it up, do all that type of thing. He goes, the rest of them might as well not get them. Lowe's might as well forget selling them because we're not going to be able to put them up. So Frank is aware. The way I understand it, the last time I talked to Frank was, he says, he was out there in the Platte, and he said, I'm working to try to get it so they deliver to your home, and the reason I don't want to put the box up, like I told you, I have no recourse. Once I put it up, it's kind of, you're showing you're giving up.
Once the gang box goes up.
I'm sorry?
Once the cluster box goes up. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, Frank, but that's great. I just want you to solve this. I was talking to Frank. I just want you to solve it, Frank. Either the boxes, he goes, well, a lot of people out here don't want the boxes. Well, I want my mail delivered, whether it's at my home or in the cluster box. So, and then he filed this, whatever.
The appeal.
And so it's like, okay, so I understand that you're not going to be able to make a final decision for us, but we may be back. I mean, because we need to find some way to get Frank to either put them up or the post office to give us mail. It's that simple. That's our two choices.
You're welcome to come back here in 2 weeks. We meet the first and third Monday of every month. And we'll be happy to hear from you in 2 weeks, and hopefully by then we
I
will
hope
have
so.
results from Cincinnati.
Madam President, may I interject?
Yes, Mr. Phillips?
I would suggest to everybody that unfortunately, it's the federal government that's holding this up. And from what I'm hearing, and you need to hit those federal representatives of Senator Portman and Brown and Congressman Davidson to get them on it. And their local representatives are very receptive. I know Adam Hewitt here in town is very receptive to helping folks. So they're the ones that can put the pressure on the Postal Service. Locally, I don't know that we have the hammer to do that. And I would suggest everyone getting to individually with all of your representatives at the federal level and putting that pressure there also.
I'm seeing it different. I'm seeing it as Frank Harlow. He knew that, no, I'm not trying to bring Frank down.
Yeah. I understand that, but he's not, Mr. Harlow's not the one that's going to deliver your mail. The
No,
post
but
office is.
he is stopping it from having the boxes put up because he was aware that we had to have the boxes. He was aware of that. He sat right there in his office and said, I was aware of this.
Well, if that is the case, then I think maybe a consensus of your neighbors needs to be done out there so that you as a group will say, we're either going to put the mailboxes up or we're going to put the cluster box up. And if that's your acceptable answer, then that's your acceptable answer.
Well, I mean, that's what it's supposed to be. I mean, the post office had told him, this is the way it's going to be. He had just said that that's the way it's going to be now, and all your new subdivisions, that's the way it's going to be. So Frank was aware of that.
Right.
What he's trying to do is get it so that he can deliver to each of our homes.
Right.
But you keep prolonging it. I mean, you knew from the beginning, and what's he going to do with all of these other developments? He's going to go through the same thing. So I'm saying, so I don't see it as the post office. I see it now as Frank either needs to put the boxes up, that's what he's supposed to do.
Well, it sounds like, though, that some want home delivery, others want clusters, so you need to,
And I
again,
get that.
So that's,
I understand that, but, well, I see it a little different.
And maybe over the long term, I know this has been a tough 8 months, but maybe over the long term, if you can get it delivered to your home, that would be the best of both
Yeah.
worlds, and
It
2 or
would be,
5
but
years down the
It may go on
road.
forever and ever, like you just said earlier. I mean, how much longer are we going to keep going?
Yeah.
And then what if we go another 6 months? Oh, Frank's got to put up those boxes. Okay. So, you know, you can see the frustration, you understand, and you, if you were there, you would be in the same situation. So let's hope that maybe this gentleman here can find some information for us in a week or two and start probably a new research. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other topics tonight? Anyone else in the audience that has any comments?
Amy Shannon, 1560 Windridge, Apartment D. I just wanted to provide a little follow-up. We did have our pop-up pantry on the 26th. It was cold and it was really rainy. I don't think I've ever been that wet, but we had a very successful pop-up pantry. So I wanted to provide some numbers. We served 190 families, which comprised 254 adults, 144 children, and 120 elderly people. Everybody got some frozen meat, some frozen fruit, watermelon, pumpkins, 10 pounds of potatoes, and blocks of cheese. With that, approximately 75% of the families were from Troy. So I wanted to let you know that it's, in the level for this is the 200% of the poverty line. So that is pretty substantial. So with that, we're having another pop-up pantry in November. This one will actually be in Piqua, but it is open to all Miami County residents. So just wanted to share. Thank
do you
you.
have a date in November?
It is the 23rd, and I have little flyers if anybody would like one. 23rd, and it'll be at Upper Valley Career Center at the Adult Technology Center. They're actually having an open house, and our goal is to have 2 trucks for that so that we'd be able to serve up to 400 families.
If you would like to leave one of those with Mrs. Knight, why, then if any council members want further details, they've got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further comments?
Madam President,
Yes, Mrs. Oda.
when you're done out here, I have one thing regarding the mailboxes.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to share the last email that I had from Congressman Davidson's office so that all of you know what the last communication was. Good morning. This was Friday. I got this. I heard back from our USPS liaison this morning, and in quotes, our operation manager stated that they should have a decision by the end of next week. I will contact, and then Alyssa at Davidson's office says, I will contact the USPS again next Friday, so that's this coming Friday, if we haven't received a notification that it has been completed. So Davidson's office is following up with the federal end of the post office. She can't guarantee that they're going to have it done, but Davidson's office is following up with the post office, the federal post office, so hopefully we'll hear something from them.
Anyone else in the audience? Any other comments? Okay. Thank you all for attending tonight's meeting. Have a safe and peace-filled week.